show for you today. Do of course we do. You guys can't see me, but there I am. Of course we do, and we're gonna get right to the live action. I found the footage. Maduro. I'm sorry, I always say it because I think of Maduro. The medication. Anyway, I found the footage, and I'm not gonna tell you where I found it at, and you guys would just leave my show and go look at it. And I want to talk to you guys here, and we want to discuss the incident on the Jay Votto show. Okay, so here we go. I'm gonna go straight to where I see it at, and this is Fox. All right, let's see. Ah, man, this is ridiculous. Mm. It's like hidden footage. I promise, guys. Let's see. Let me see. One moment. Let's watch this video until we find the video. All
Before
right.
the U.S.
I'm not
captured
gonna leave you
Venezuelan
hanging.
President Nicolas Maduro in an overnight military operation, he led the country for more than a decade. Since 2019, the U.S. and dozens of other nations have refused to recognize Maduro as Venezuela's legitimate president. He spent the last few months railing against efforts to restore a democratic process in his country, where many blame his socialist policies for Venezuela's deep economic and social crises. For more on Venezuela under Maduro, let's bring in Jorge Gerizati, a Venezuelan native and president of the Economic Inclusion Group. Your thoughts, first of all, when you woke up this morning and heard what the U.S. had done, what was your first reaction?
I woke up the same way that most Venezuelans woke up, which is with happiness, enthusiasm, and finally we have opportunity to rebuild our country. So with a lot of optimism, we can do the things in the right way.
There are millions of Venezuelans who have fled.
And we're live.
Spread to other countries, but absolutely, I think President Claudia Sheinbaum is waking up today very concerned about what this means for Mexico.
Welcome back to the Jay Votto show.
So even as she's not looking to put her hand in the fire, kind of actively denouncing what the U.S. just did in Venezuela.
Well, we certainly appreciate your context that you were able to provide us. As this is what we do here on Live Now from Fox. We get different live feeds. We want to make sure that we're able to bring them to people as we
again to what they were. If I would have told you 10 years ago that Russian Spetsnaz special forces would be running around in Venezuela, you would have laughed at me. You said that's impossible. But lo and behold, it occurred. It happened. Not anymore. So
I think this is what we're actually looking for.
Anytime.
Venezuela capturing Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro along with his wife, removing him from the country and bringing him to the U.S. in New York. And this is a live look outside the Brooklyn Detention Center where Maduro is heading. We watched him get on a helicopter, take a short flight there to the Brooklyn Detention Center where we are watching live right now. He is expected to come in. As we continue to watch this shot, if we see him, we will bring this to you live. Before this, actually, we are seeing him on our other shot here outside of that helicopter. So we are continuing to watch this all live as Nicolas Maduro was transported from Venezuela to New York City and now headed to the Brooklyn Detention Center, set to face narco-terrorism conspiracy charges.
We found the video.
After Operation Absolute Resolve happening overnight in Venezuela.
Right now, I see they have him in custody, obviously. He arrives at Brooklyn Detention Center. That's what we're watching right now. It's going to soon populate on the screen. And they have guards in front of the detention center gates right now. I'm watching that live on another feed, which should also populate on the screen fairly shortly for you guys. So the fence in the detention center is being patrolled and
So
it's
we are
being guarded
watching
right now.
live
One
right now,
second.
Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro entering that van. We just saw him exit the helicopter, and we are watching right now live outside of the Brooklyn Detention Center where Maduro is headed. Overnight, the Trump administration carrying out this military operation in Venezuela, capturing Maduro and his wife, removing him from the country and flying him here to the U.S. The UN Security Council also set to hold an emergency meeting on Venezuela on Monday at 10 a.m. And there's been a lot of commentary, of course, on these strikes from different leaders around the world. This happening overnight in Venezuela. Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro being captured along with his wife. We've seen those photos of him in captivity being flown to the U.S. and now arriving live as we're watching at the Brooklyn Detention Center, set to face a narco-terrorism conspiracy charges in New York. And President Trump has also said that the United States will run Venezuela, at least temporarily, and tap into its vast oil reserve to sell to other nations. We've been seeing developments come from this.
They're going to make a big deal out of the oil. And I know that the president said a lot about the oil during the briefing, during the conference and the address to the nation, but they're going to try to spin that in the most vile direction imaginable. CNN, watch them. Watch how they do. Actually, I probably have the video, but let's get back to this one. Roll it.
All day long. Again, this operation happening overnight in Venezuela called Absolute Resolve. We were just listening to the press conference from President Trump and other leaders happening just a few hours after that overnight operation in Venezuela. We are watching live now again as the car transporting Nicolas Maduro to the Brooklyn Detention Center in New York.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. We have more footage for you guys. What I'm watching on the television screen right now, this should populate on your screen. They're still moving police vehicles down New York, uh, down the streets of New York, and we're gonna get that to you guys soon. They're leaving. It looks like they're leaving the detention center. One van has its door open.
And this is live right now outside of the Brooklyn Detention Center. In one of those vans is Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro, who was captured along with his wife overnight in Venezuela, flown to New York City, and headed now to the Brooklyn Detention Center to face narco-terrorism conspiracy charges. Now, hours after this military operation overnight in Venezuela, President Trump did say that the United States will run Venezuela, at least temporarily, and tap into the oil reserves to sell to other nations. This action capped an intensive Trump administration pressure campaign on Venezuela and its leader, as well as months of secret planning to carry out this operation called Absolute Resolve. And speaking to reporters hours after Maduro's capture, Trump revealed his plans to exploit the leadership void in order to fix the country's oil infrastructure and sell large amounts of that oil to other countries. Now, we also have a shot here. This is right outside of the Brooklyn Detention Center where Maduro is heading right now. This is a live look for you right now as we're watching this transport process. We watched Maduro along with some guards get into a helicopter, take a flight there to Brooklyn, and now heading to the Brooklyn Detention Center. Now, earlier today, Venezuela's vice president did demand in a speech that the U.S. free Maduro and called him the country's rightful leader. We are watching live right now outside of the Brooklyn Detention Center where Maduro is set to arrive any moment. He is set to face narco-terrorism conspiracy charges in New York, and President Trump saying the United States will run Venezuela, at least temporarily, in the meantime. And as I just said, the vice president of Venezuela is calling for the U.S. to free Maduro, calling him the country's rightful leader. We've seen reaction coming from leaders in the U.S. as well as across the world in the hours after this overnight operation in Venezuela, capturing Maduro and his wife, bringing Maduro there to New York and to the Brooklyn Detention Center, where we're watching live right now. So this is live right now outside of the Brooklyn Detention Center. Maduro is set to arrive there. And this is another look outside of the detention center. You can see NYPD vehicles and some barriers there as Maduro is being transported right now. We just watched live as he got out of a helicopter into a van, heading there to the Brooklyn Detention Center in New York after he was transported from Venezuela overnight. We've seen those photos of him being transported, and right now we're watching live again in New York City. This is outside of the Brooklyn Detention Center where Maduro is headed.
This is just a shot that you are that I actually stated before. These
There's a
guys
live
are
look outside of the Brooklyn Detention Center.
Yeah.
Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro headed there right now. We're watching the transport process live
right. So they're gonna go ahead and transfer it. It's a lot more police on the scene. Which you will see soon. So we're gonna go ahead and get to that. Thank you for joining the Jay Rovato Show. Wow, this is amazing. From the point where they got him to America, from the point where Donald Trump had his address, from the point where they are detaining him and putting him in a detention center, you can see a lot of police presence in New York City right now. This is a major, major, major historical event.
right now on Live Now from Fox. And we want to give you some background on this Operation Absolute Resolve happening overnight in Venezuela. We've heard from leaders today following this operation about the planning that went into it. Telling reporters in a news conference that U.S. forces had rehearsed these maneuvers for months, learning everything about Maduro, where he was, what he ate, as well as the details even of his pets and the clothes that he wore. Now, this was from General Dan Kane, who spoke during that news conference. He says that his forces were set by early December, and they were practicing again these maneuvers for months in preparation for this operation happening overnight in Venezuela. Again, this is a live look outside of the Brooklyn Detention Center. We see some guards there walking. We did see them putting Maduro out of a helicopter, entering a van, heading there to the Brooklyn Detention Center, where we are watching live right now as we wait for him to arrive there. Now, Trump also telling Fox that U.S. forces had practiced the extraction on a replica building to prepare for this overnight strike where they captured Maduro and his wife. Trump said they actually built a house that was identical to the one they went into, with all of the same design, so they could practice extracting Maduro as they did overnight, and then flying him here to the U.S. and set to arrive there at the Brooklyn Detention Center as we're watching live right now. We watched as he entered that helicopter, landed there in Brooklyn, heading to the Brooklyn Detention Center. Maduro set to face narco-terrorism conspiracy charges. So this shot is outside of the Brooklyn Detention Center, but we also have a live look right now at the transport vehicles that are getting Maduro to that detention center. We saw him in a helicopter getting into a van, and now we're seeing movement from that van along with several guard vehicles transporting him there to the Brooklyn Detention Center. This is a live look right now from New York City after he was flown out of Venezuela to the U.S., now heading to the Brooklyn Detention Center to face charges there in New York City.
This is the scene that I was talking about earlier, where there's a lot of police presence in the streets, and there's a van driving down the street with its back door open.
We are watching the live transport of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro heading to the Brooklyn Detention Center in New York. He was removed from Venezuela overnight, flown out of the country to the U.S. Now, live right now, he is heading to the Brooklyn Detention Center, where he is set to face narco-terrorism conspiracy charges. Now, President Trump, after this operation overnight in Venezuela, said that the U.S. will temporarily run Venezuela and also tap into its vast oil reserves to sell to other nations. U.S. operations on Saturday represented America's most assertive action to achieve regime change in a country since the nation's 2003 invasion in Iraq. These actions are raising new questions about the legality of the U.S. moving under a broader campaign against Venezuela. And this was a middle-of-the-night seizure of Maduro and his wife, Cilia Flores, who were then transported on a U.S. warship and arrived in New York this evening to face narco-terrorism conspiracy charges. And this is beyond even the most high-profile historical examples of aggressive American actions toward these governments. This comes after a surprise. Oh, yes, we have lost the shot. So let's go there to another.
Orders that were pressing President Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio earlier today about what a U.S.-run Venezuela will look like in the interim. Another thing about the interim leadership, by the way, is there is, yes, a power vacuum in Venezuela, but also Venezuela has a vice president, and that vice president, by all accounts, appears to be the presumed interim leader. Her name is Delcy Rodriguez. She spoke in front of cameras earlier today, and the Trump administration has said that they anticipate that she and the other administration officials who remain in Caracas, the Trump administration anticipates that they will work with the U.S. government on a path forward, but Trump also said that if things don't go the way they want, then they are very much capable of a second wave of activity, military activity. What that would look like remains to be seen, but President Trump says that they are capable of a second wave, Shauna. So those are all the major threads that we're tracking, and obviously another camera kind of petering out on us there as we await for any sign of Maduro or perhaps his wife being taken into custody.
Yeah, Austin, and we are watching this all happening live. We saw the transport into the helicopter, into the van, and now heading there towards the Brooklyn Detention Center. We can see a lot of armed vehicles and security there outside of the detention center as we await Maduro's arrival there. We saw, as you said, some limited views of Maduro, but we did see him being transported live here. So, Austin, President Trump also saying just a few hours after this overnight operation that the United States will run Venezuela, at least temporarily, in his words, also talking about tapping into Venezuela's vast oil reserves to sell to other nations. What are the plans here moving forward for U.S. involvement?
That's the million-dollar question, is what will the U.S. do with Venezuela's oil? The U.S. has really not been shy about saying when they seized oil tankers, they were going to take the oil. Now that they have removed Nicolas Maduro from Caracas, they haven't been shy about saying, well, Venezuela has outdated oil infrastructure. In fact, they dedicated a decent portion of that press conference earlier today to pretty much describing the outdated oil infrastructure that the U.S., that the Venezuelans have there, and they said that that equipment was likely originally installed by the U.S. some decades ago. All of that stuff seems to be outdated at this point. So the Trump administration, their perspective on this is that they're basically going to be looking at their oil infrastructure. They're going to be looking to see how they can update it. They're going to be looking to see how they can modernize it. And then really what President Trump was saying earlier today is they expect to make the oil business, if you will, and the oil extraction out there more efficient. And the oil business in Caracas is almost as rich as it gets. President Trump says that once they start making money off of the oil in Venezuela, they're going to use those funds in order to help run the government. Again, that's sort of a framework, but there's a lot to be filled in there, Shauna, as far as what exactly that means. Again, who's going to be in charge? Who will be in charge? Will this be literally some high-ranking Trump administration officials that are going to be overseeing Venezuela? I think when he was asked about it at the press conference earlier today, President Trump pointed back to Marco Rubio and some of his other top aides and said, you know, these guys are very much going to play a role in how this thing shakes out. Now, does that mean that there's going to be a U.S. presence on the ground? Unclear at this time. But one thing's for sure, when it comes to oil, the U.S. says that they intend to use that oil, they intend to sell that oil, and when they sell that oil, they intend to use those profits in order to eventually help them fund their way of governing Venezuela. Unclear how long the U.S. plans to run Venezuela, but they say that that's what they're going to do. By the way, I was reading some reporting that says that there is no U.S. presence in Caracas at this moment. So there's a lot of questions as to how the U.S. even goes about starting on the path to running Venezuela. There was reports earlier today that there are still Venezuelan guards that are watching over all of the pertinent buildings in Caracas. So very much still a Venezuelan presence and very much still the footprint of the Maduro government in Caracas, and not a U.S. presence quite yet, Shauna, but U.S. officials say that that is to come at some point.
Austin, and we also heard from D.C. police saying they don't see any threat to D.C. right now, but they are prepared to increase their presence if needed. Of course, everybody on guard following this massive operation overnight. And what we're looking at right now is a live view outside of the Brooklyn Detention Center. We also have another view of this transport of Maduro headed there to the Brooklyn Detention Center. We're watching this all happening live right now. As he was transported via helicopter and then got into a van there, heading to the Brooklyn Detention Center, set to face narco-terrorism conspiracy charges. Now, as far as this strike overnight, the Trump administration did say that they had been planning this for months, practicing. He even said that U.S. forces practiced their extraction on a replica building before extracting Maduro and his wife earlier overnight in Venezuela. We're going to be talking actually to a former FBI security analyst about what goes into this kind of operation. Again, we are watching live right now outside of the Brooklyn Detention Center where Maduro is set to arrive any moment. Austin, what did you hear about this operation itself and what went into carrying out such a massive operation that they're calling Absolute Resolve to capture Maduro along with his wife overnight?
Basically, this thing involved more than 150 aircraft from 20 different bases. This was a surprise. This was, they effectively carried out a major surprise attack to the point of where when reporters asked administration officials why Congress was not notified before this attack, the rationale they gave was because they didn't want anything to leak. They said Maduro was a fugitive. They didn't need to alert Congress before they did what they did. That's the Trump administration's position on this. But ultimately, they were able to get this done in the secrecy of night. They go in first, and many people have seen the social media videos in Caracas, the explosions that were taking place overnight. Those explosions, we have since learned, was the U.S. military taking out air defense systems. They took out Venezuela's air defense system so that way the next group could come through safely. That group was going to be the troops that were designated to go into Maduro's residence and capture him. And they ended up capturing his wife as well. So he and his wife captured together in the dark of night. The U.S. officials also said that and they didn't say how, but they said that they did manage to make the entire area go dark. And that is something that you notice when you look at the social media videos of, just everyday civilians who happened to be up and who happened to capture this thing as it was happening in real time. In fact, some people were up at the top of a mountain, and they really did get a bird's eye view of all the stuff going on. You can see a large swath of Caracas completely dark. So somehow, some way, the U.S. officials, they were able to either power down the immediate area or just simply make it so that they couldn't be seen in the dark at night. They, again, said those were covert ways that they made that happen. They didn't tell us how they did it. But this was a massive campaign, Shauna. Raising Kane said, and he's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, he said this included F-22s, F-35s, F-18s, B-1 bombers. There were other support aircraft involved as well. The U.S. military hardware didn't make it through unscathed. They said that they made it into Venezuela, and I believe it was President Trump that said that at least one of the helicopters involved did take some return fire. It did damage the copter, but it didn't render it incapable of flying. So, basically, the copter damaged. We also heard that there were reports of injuries of U.S. service members, but nobody died. So ultimately, all of the service members were able to come back. All of the military hardware was able to come back. And this was a huge undertaking and something that required, as you alluded to, months of planning, months of secrecy, and ultimately we are going to have to watch and how this plays out in Caracas in the coming days and in the coming weeks. They were caught off guard. They knew something was possible. Of course they knew something was possible. There was this enormous military buildup in the Caribbean. The U.S. was carrying out this pressure campaign since September, basically. So it wasn't that like Venezuela was completely in the dark. They had an idea that something was possible, but the timing, the nature of the operation, all of this was completely anybody's guess. We were asking the Associated Press's Will Weissert. He travels with the president. He's a member of the White House press pool. I asked him if there were any telltale signs that something was about to happen. He said no. And that was very much intentional. They did not want anybody, including the media, including Congress members, they did not alert anybody that this was going to happen. And the reason why is because they didn't want to give away their mission. This ultimately really did rely on secrecy, and it relied on them working in the dark of night and the element of surprise. Shauna, they ended up carrying it out, and they made it back with all their men and all their equipment.
Right.
Yeah, U.S. officials saying this took months of planning. They studied everything about Maduro, from his pets to what he ate. Again, a replica of the building that they extracted Maduro and his wife from. So this was months in the making, as U.S. officials said, following that overnight strike. Now, we've seen a lot of reaction coming in since this happened, both in support and against this action from the U.S. And we've also seen a number of protests, particularly in D.C. What have we seen a reaction from civilians as far as protests and speaking out maybe against this action from the Trump administration today?
Yeah, you know, it's fascinating because that's one of the most common questions I get. I speak with viewers often.
I don't understand the
I like to
protests.
ask them what their questions are about any given story on any given day. A lot of people were curious about the international and national reaction to this event. And yes, there were protests that were, well, I'll call them demonstrations. There were demonstrations that were in favor and not in favor of this. Everything comes with nuance when it comes to these things. There were demonstrations in favor of how the U.S. carried this out. There were plenty of protests saying, you know, this is illegal. There were plenty of protesters condemning the U.S.'s actions. But at the same token, there were plenty of people in Caracas who were celebrating the removal of Maduro. So it really depends on which demonstration and which geographic region you're talking about. We've seen, protests for and protests against what happened in the overnight hours. And you could say the same about Washington. You could say the same about Caracas. You could say the same about some of the other international countries that have weighed in here. And that's not just civilians, too. We've seen lawmakers here stateside, pretty much on a partisan level, depending on what side of the aisle you're on, you could pretty much guess how any given lawmaker felt about what happened last night. Many Democrats basically condemning how the Trump administration carried this out. And many Republicans applauding the Trump administration for getting rid of Maduro, a figure who has long been seen as an illegitimate leader, a leader of a narco state. And it's really, again, one of those things where it depends who you ask. The reaction really is mixed. And there actually was one Republican lawmaker who was kind of against the grain, if you will, Thomas Massie. Thomas Massie is the same Republican who was really coming down on Trump for the Epstein files, and he came down on Trump for his operation in Venezuela last night. So protests across the world, correct? And also, I'm just reading from the BBC also, as the dust was settling in Caracas, Venezuelans, they were reacting to news of Maduro's capture. They reacted with hope, they reacted with fear, they reacted with uncertainty, Shauna. So it's a range of emotions depending on who you're talking about.
And we did hear from the vice president of Venezuela as well, calling for Maduro to be freed, saying he is the rightful leader of the country. We've seen U.S. officials, of course, also commenting on this on both sides, as you mentioned. A lot of reaction coming in right now. This is a live look outside of the Brooklyn Detention Center where Maduro is headed right now. And we have another shot right now of the transport vehicles, a huge crowd gathered there awaiting Maduro to exit those vehicles, and it looks like we did lose that shot as well. So this is back to the detention center, a live look outside as Nicolas Maduro is set to arrive there any moment now. He's going to face narco-terrorism conspiracy charges.
So we are working on getting a guest plugged in to our system here. What we're going to do is continue on this shot, because ultimately one thing that we do here at Live Now is we watch with you. It's important that we carry these live feeds, and it's important that we watch them live, raw, and uninterrupted. It's important to us to bring you these things as they happen in real time, because we want to give you the full scope of what's actually going on down on the ground. And obviously lots and lots of looky-loos, as you might imagine. I'm seeing some flags. I'm seeing, and it might be possible that our shot is dropping yet again. Legal experts immediately raised questions about whether this operation was lawful. Venezuela's vice president has demanded that the U.S. free Maduro and has called him the country's rightful leader. Maduro obviously now is not even near the Caribbean. He has since flown to New York. That's why we're watching these bump shots outside this Brooklyn Detention Center. We don't even know if we will see Maduro. We're not entirely sure how visible he will be. What we do know is at some point we expect him to be transported to this Brooklyn Detention Center, and it will be fascinating. Maduro will be on trial. I was speaking with former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani earlier today. I asked him, this is a question that's on all of our minds. Once this thing does go to trial, will there be cameras in the courtroom? Unfortunately, the answer to that question is no. Just like the Diddy trial, this is a federal case in New York's Southern District, and that means they do not allow cameras in the courtroom there. I'll read a post from Attorney General Bondi. She says earlier today that Maduro and his wife have been indicted in the Southern District of New York. She says Nicolas Maduro has been charged with narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices, and conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices against the United States. So, they will soon face the full wrath of American justice on American soil in American courts, according to Bondi. She says on behalf of the entire U.S. Department of Justice, she would like to thank President Trump for having the courage to demand accountability on behalf of the American people. She also thanked the brave military members who conducted the incredible and highly successful mission to capture these international narco traffickers. As you can see out there in New York, Venezuelan flags, lots of interest, and that's probably an understatement, an intense amount of interest, really, as this NYPD van pulls up. And we are awaiting any sort of clarity on what we will be able to see, who will be able to see. When Maduro got off of the plane, it was very tough to see him. It was dark. He had some sort of face covering on. And then when we saw him transported to a helicopter earlier today, it was basically his back was turned to the cameras. You just couldn't make out Maduro very well at all. And I'm curious if we're going to see something similar here. So it looks like that audience is moving back. The crowd is either they're being told to move back, or they're just choosing to get some distance from these NYPD officers. Zohran Mamdani has chimed in. Zohran, of course, is the new mayor of New York City. He's only been in office for 2 days. He was sworn in on January 1st. And he weighed in on this earlier today. The reason why he's weighing in on this is because Maduro's going to be prosecuted in his city. Mayor Mamdani saying he was briefed this morning on the U.S. military capture of Venezuelan President Maduro and his wife, as well as their planned imprisonment in federal custody here in New York City. Unilateral.
These people look excited. These aren't the angry protesters. These are the excited protesters here.
Really attacking a sovereign nation is an act of war and a violation of federal and international law, Mamdani says. The blatant pursuit of regime change doesn't just affect those abroad, he says. It directly impacts New Yorkers, including tens of thousands of Venezuelans who call this city home. He says his focus is their safety and the safety of every New Yorker. He says that his administration will continue to monitor the situation and issue relevant guidance as we see crowds out there in New York City, some of them waving the Venezuelan flag. Unclear to me if these are pro-Maduro or anti-Maduro demonstrators. One thing is for sure, these are pro-Venezuela demonstrators. And we'll continue to cover this as Shauna continues to work to connect with her guest. One facet of this that I've been following is lawmaker reactions to these. And you know what? I'm just looking through social media here. It looks like there have been some new pictures released of Nicolas Maduro. It did appear that Nicolas Maduro was photographed at his arrival earlier tonight at the New York Stewart International Airport. So we will work to get those photos into the newsroom. It does appear that there were more photos of Maduro released within the past half hour or so here. While I'm going through reactions from high-profile names, looks like Kamala Harris, as of an hour ago, responding to this situation in Caracas. I'll read her remarks verbatim. She says, Donald Trump's actions in Venezuela do not make America safer, stronger, or more affordable. That Maduro is a brutal, illegitimate dictator does not change the fact that this action was both unlawful and unwise. We've seen this movie before. Wars for regime change or oil that are sold as strength but turn into chaos, and American families pay the price. The American people do not want this, and they are tired of being lied to. This is not about drugs or democracy. It's about oil and Donald Trump's desire to play the regional strongman, Harris says. If he cared about either, he wouldn't pardon a convicted drug trafficker or sideline Venezuela's legitimate opposition while pursuing deals with Maduro's cronies. Harris says the president is putting troops at risk, spending billions, destabilizing a region, and offering no legal authority, no exit plan, and no benefit at home. America needs leadership whose priorities are lowering costs for working families, enforcing the rule of law, strengthening alliances, and most importantly, putting the American people first. That was a quote from Kamala Harris, posted about an hour ago. Let's talk about some of the GOP reaction.
I have one thing to say about that. She's out of her mind. She's trying to remain relevant. Okay, that's two things. She's out of her mind and she's trying to remain relevant. Okay, three things. And she didn't even write that. Roll it.
Representative Anna Paulina Luna saying earlier today that Maduro put a hit out on Secretary Rubio when he was a senator. This action alone puts you on a certain list that you never come off of. Maduro is also responsible for the deaths of thousands of Americans. Paulina Luna saying, let this be known to any world leader. If you call for and or pay for the assassination or bounty of any U.S. politician, you will face the wrath of the entire U.S. government, and we will eventually eliminate the threat. Anna Paulina Luna sounding off earlier today. We're getting in pictures and images of the Maduro perp walk also. So these are things that we're going to have to work to gather in the newsroom. We're getting more videos and more photos of Maduro in captivity. And it looks like more video and photos have been released, so we will work to get those into our newsroom as soon as possible. One other thing I'm tracking is the White House's posts on this. The White House has said that Nicolas Maduro had his chance. It was reported that Maduro was given plenty of off-ramps. The White House saying that those off-ramps were not taken. And so that's what got us to the point that we're at now.
All right. So I want to go ahead and get on over to Fox, and they're showing what the other world leaders are saying about the move that America made and how they feel about they're speaking on they're speaking on emotions and jealousy. That's my opinion. But I'm going to play it so you guys can make your own judgment like I always do. And we're going to get to that video right now. Once again, it's the Jay
So we
Ravato
did
Show.
hear from GOP lawmakers earlier in the day as we continue to look at images of these.
Okay, yeah, we're going to get right to it. It's the world leaders and what they think about what happened in America and in Venezuela.
This morning who are waking up to a new reality with what happened overnight. We have our CB Cotton, who has been following reaction from all over the world. CB, there's been plenty of reaction here in the United States. Democrats, Republicans split on whether or not this was an illegal or legal move. But around the world, there's also harsh reaction as well. What can you tell us, CB?
Hey, Brian, that's right. Well, this morning, the UN Secretary General released a statement saying he is deeply concerned that international law may not have been respected. As you mentioned, global leaders are watching as all of this unfolds to see what comes next for Venezuela and U.S. foreign policy. In Europe, the European Council president released a statement, Antonio Costa, and he said he was following the developments with, quote, great concern, urging de-escalation and respect of international law. Some Latin American countries are also making similar calls. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum reposted the official statement of her country's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which condemned the strikes as a violation of the United Nations and called for dialogue, not force. U.S. adversaries are also weighing in. Russia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs writing in part on X, quote, "The pretext used to justify these actions are untenable. Russia reaffirms its solidarity with the Venezuelan people. Iran and its supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, which also has a long history of conflict with the U.S. Well, he has rattled off a series of posts this morning about the strike, including one which says in part, quote, "What's important is when one realizes an enemy wants to force something on one's government or nation with false claims, they must stand firmly against the enemy." But there are also voices of support. Argentina's president, a strong ally of President Trump, wrote, quote, "Freedom advances. Long live freedom." And in the UK, reform leader and staunch Trump ally Nigel Farage, he questioned the legality of the attack, but said it may lead to a favorable outcome. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer had more a reserved take, saying he wanted to make it clear that the UK was not involved in these strikes, and he believes everyone should uphold international law. He also added that he wants to speak to President Trump and other UK allies. Brian, we're going to monitor it. Back to you.
No doubt. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Michael Waltz, just putting on X, this is not regime change. This is justice. Maduro was indicted, illegitimate dictator that led a declared narco-terrorism organization responsible for killing American citizens. All eyes will be on New York City this upcoming week, as well as Caracas, Venezuela. CB Cotton, thank you from the United Nations.
Hey, everyone.
We're going to get right back on over. I see the streets are piling up with people. It's getting really, really active over there in New York. The streets are becoming a little overcrowded. I don't know what's going on, but I'm pretty sure law enforcement can handle it. Let's get back on over to that right now. I think what just happened was the police pushed everyone back. They're removing some boundaries right now. They're pushing some things back. Let's see what goes on.
So we are continuing to watch live right now. This is a shot outside of the Brooklyn Detention Center. We are awaiting the arrival of Nicolas Maduro, who is set to face charges there in New York. We saw his transport vehicle after he got off a helicopter heading there to the Brooklyn Detention Center. As we continue to watch this live, we do want to bring in Fox's Rebecca Castor with more on this story after these overnight strikes and capturing Nicolas Maduro along with his wife. bringing him there to New York City. Again, this is a live look outside of the Brooklyn Detention Center where Maduro is set to arrive any moment. Rebecca, what else do we know here?
Yeah, well, Shauna, just think about this. It's going to be a monumental moment when we do see Nicolas Maduro arrive at the detention center there. Think about it. Just yesterday, he was the disputed leader, but still a leader of a country, Venezuela. And now tonight, he will spend the night behind bars and go through processing. And we are expecting his arraignment will be on Monday. So from a leader to now a criminal who is going to be on trial. But just to recap, for viewers that might just be tuning in, this was a mission that was months in the making, involving nearly every branch of the U.S. military. And it's really significant that U.S. forces pulled it all off with no casualties to our troops over there. And now this head of state is in custody. So it will be really interesting to see what it is like as he is brought to the detention center there.
And we will continue to monitor this. This is the live look outside of that detention center. Thank you, Rebecca, for that report, and we will continue to watch this shot for you. Let's take that back out live. Again, this is the Brooklyn Detention Center. Maduro set to arrive there any moment, facing charges of narco-terrorism conspiracy. His wife also captured along with him overnight in this operation in Venezuela. We will check back in with our reporters throughout the night as we continue to get developments here. Again, this is a live look outside of the Brooklyn Detention Center. We are awaiting Maduro's arrival any moment. We saw him getting onto a helicopter, then into a van, heading there to the detention center. We don't know right now where his wife is exactly. She will also be facing charges there as well. So we are waiting again for a look at Maduro, if we get one, exiting that transport van that we saw him get into, heading there to the Brooklyn Detention Center. We are watching this live right now along with you. We will continue to monitor this shot, and we'll see if we get another glimpse of Maduro along with those guards transporting him there to the Brooklyn Detention Center. We will continue to monitor those for you. If we see Maduro or those guards arriving there, we did see him getting into a van headed there to the Brooklyn Detention Center. So we'll continue to monitor this shot. If we do see anything, we'll bring that to you live. Right now, we do need to step away for a 2-minute break. We will continue our coverage coming up right after this.
And while they do that, we're going to step away also for a 2-minute break on the Jay Bravado show. But what I mean by stepping away for a 2-hour break, I mean, we're going to go ahead and see what CNN is talking about. They're probably planning the same thing. They're probably spewing lies. We have nothing but time on the Jay Bravado show. Comment down below what you think about what's going on. Today is a historical day. Let's celebrate.
Helicopters landing in New York, which you were looking at just moments ago. Omar, what are you seeing?
Yeah, so you heard John Miller talking about 3 helicopters that took off from Newburgh, headed out this way. We just saw 3 helicopters land, matching roughly the time it would take to fly by helicopter here. What you're looking at right now is what has been an increased law enforcement, one that's increased pretty steadily over the last few hours since we've been out here. We actually have been pushed much further back. This is the heliport here where all of this, the variety of law enforcement, predominantly NYPD, but we've seen federal officers here as well, including DEA agents, a mass of them that just came in within the last few minutes to this area as well. We're waiting to see, we can hear the helicopters. We saw them land just beyond our view here, 3 of them, it appeared. So we're waiting for them to go into what would be sort of this indoor area, and then they would come into presumably one of these vehicles where they would then go for processing here at a federal building in New York City. Now, for those that aren't familiar with sort of the geography of Manhattan and New York City, we're on the west side of Manhattan, what's known as the West Side Highway. Both lanes in both directions have been closed off by law enforcement to this point. This is typically a very busy area. We are now seeing lights from the New York Police Department turn on. That has not been the case previously to this point. We can still hear the motor of the helicopters to this, but I can't stress enough, this has been the highest level of law enforcement presence we have seen to this point, one that has been steadily increasing over the past few hours, Jessica.
Yeah, and Omar, we see the DEA agents there walking past the cameras as well. Okay, Omar, stay with us. Let's bring John Miller back in to help us understand what we're looking at here. John, Omar describing the scene. We are in the middle. It's actually very close to where we're broadcasting from right now. It's right behind our building. But we are in the middle of Manhattan where this is happening. Take us through what you're seeing in this scene.
Well, what you're seeing is a joint force. You have DEA agents, FBI agents, and a contingent of NYPD people broken into specialized units that are going to make this critical move. Obviously, this is done under very tight security because you're dealing with an individual who is charged with being in league with some of the most violent drug cartels in the world, who is also a world leader in his own right, or was at least until this morning. But what you're looking at there is a armored vehicle that is what they call a Bearcat. This is an armored vehicle that contains what they call a CAT team, a counter assault team, which is part of this motorcade. So you'll have a vehicle that will contain President Maduro and his wife, maybe in a separate vehicle. You'll have the escort vehicles, which are from NYPD's Highway Patrol. They have the route between where they are and the location they are going to frozen. As we watch that move out, we see the van, and then we're going to see the armored vehicle following that, which
John,
is the counter assault team.
They're driving to Brooklyn now? Is that the plan?
Yep, they drove to Brooklyn and we saw exactly what happened. We're going to let you know what happens. If we get any further news on this, I'm going to be back live reporting to you on the Jay Ravato Show. This is not spin. This is history unfolding. What's happening with Nicolas Maduro matters. And the media will try to spin that. Guys, please be careful. Guide your ears. Guard your ears. Okay? You saw it here first on the Jay Ravato Show. Please like, subscribe, and share. I'm sorry. Stay sharp on the Jay Ravato Show. And as always, I love you. And you know I do.